Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we are going to be covering section 5.4, return methods. So far in this chapter, we have coded methods. All of the methods that we have coded were void methods, which means that we were not returning any information. We were passing parameters into the method to be able to use, and we were doing some computations, some algorithms, and maybe printing something to the screen. Most of the time, we want to be able to return something back, whether it's an integer, a double, a boolean, or an actual object. So make sure that you have your repo ready to go. 5.4, type in your name, your period, and let's get started. So what we're going to do first, we are going to create a method where we are going to be comparing two integers that the user will be typing in. Then we're going to return the biggest of those two integers. So therefore, we need to be able to get the user input. So we need to be able to import our scanner class. Import java.util.scanner. That's going to allow us to be able to use the scanner class, which has a method that allows us to be able to get input from the keyboard, from the user. So let's go ahead and create an object. Because the scanner class is a non-static class, in order to be able to use methods from that class, we need to be able to create an object. We're going to say scanner. We are going to give the object a variable name. So it'll be scan. We're going to call the constructor scanner. And we're going to get input from the keyboard. So therefore system.in. Now let's go and send a message to the user and say, please enter to number. Now the println is a static method because we did not have to create an object. We can just go and use the method. And please enter two integers. And now let's go ahead and declare our integers will be num1 equals. We are going to use the handle, scan the object. And now the method will be next int. And we're going to be doing the same thing for the second integer. And now we are going to create our method. We're going to create our methods above the main method. So therefore, the main method will always be on the bottom part of our program. It will be public, which means that we can use it outside the class. It will be static. We do not need to create an object like we did or scan from the scanner class. We can just go and use the method without creating an object. Now, in this case, we are going to be returning an integer. All of the methods that we have created so far used to say void, which means that we were not returning anything. This time around, we want to be able to return an integer. So int, now the name of the class, of the, not the class, but the method. Let's say maximum numbers of the max number. Now, when we call the method from inside the main method, we are going to say max num, and we are going to send in two arguments, the first integer and the second integer, which are called actual parameters. So therefore, we are going to catch them inside the main method, and we are going to catch them as formal parameters or just parameters. And we have to be able to declare them here. And we can give them the same name, num1 and num2, or we can just say x and y. And now we are going to find the biggest number. So let's go and we're going to save it into an integer. So let's say int max equal to 0, or we can say biggest. Let's go and say biggest. will be the biggest number. And we're just going to compare. If we're going to say if x is greater than y, then x will be the biggest number. Then the biggest number will be x. Do you agree? We can say if y is greater than x, then the biggest number will be y. And now that we found the biggest number, we can just go and return the biggest number, which is biggest. Now, can we actually clean this up? So this is one way to call it, right? Can we simplify it a little bit better? Yes. So we know that if x is greater than y, then x is the biggest number. We can say else the biggest number is y. That's another way of calling it, correct? And they both should work. So now that we created our method, and it's going to take two inputs or two formal parameters, x and y, and it's going to return the integer. We want to make sure that if this is an int, what we are returning, it's also an int. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error. So that's something that you need to be able to keep in mind for your AP exam. This type int should match this return item. In this case, it's a primitive, which is also an int. So therefore, that should work. Now we are returning biggest. If we run it, let's say 7 and 5, nothing happens because we're not doing anything with the return value. We can save it into a variable, so we need to be able to catch it. The same way that whatever we did with strings would say to uppercase return a string, so we need to be able to save it into a new string or into itself. We're just going to say num3 is going to be our max number. And now we're going to say system.out.println, the max or the biggest number. Yes. Num3. Let's go and run it and see what happens though. Biggest number, let's say 7 and 5. Biggest number is 7. Perfect. Let me get rid of the extra space. Let's go and run it. Let's go and now place a smaller number first. 3 and 10. So therefore that works. Now if we just say 5 and 5, it'll give us 5, which is fine. Both numbers are equal. Now we can, whenever we are returning a object or a primitive type, we need to be able to do something with it. We can save it and then we can print it out. Or if we're just going to print it out, we can actually skip this line. I'm going to copy it and I can just print it out from there automatically without having to save it anywhere. If that's the only thing that we need to do is just print it out, we can just call the method within your print statement. So let's see if that works. Let's say 10 and 8. Perfect. So what happens is that we get the user input, and then we're going to start our print statement. It's going to go from here on line 38. Once you get to this call, it's going to call the method here, and it's going to pause your main method. So it's going to transfer control to your method. It's going to go through the algorithm. It's going to return the biggest, which is the biggest number of those two. And then once it returns, it finishes the statement, and then it prints the biggest number. Or if you want, you can also use it with an if statement. The same way, so we can say if max num1 is greater than 9, then it's a double-digit number. But most of the time, we either want to save it or print it out. Now, let's talk about a bit more. Let's go and clean this up a bit more. The same way that we can, if we don't need to save it, we can just print it out from that we did here. What we can do within our maxNum method, we actually not going to save it. We're just going to say if x is greater than y, then x is the biggest number. So we're just going to return x. Now, what happens if that's the case? Once a method encounters a return, then it's going to end and then come back to the main method. Else, we're going to return y. And we don't need this statement here. And in this case, we actually don't even need the else statement, right? We know if, because it's going to end if x is a bigger number, it's going to come over to line number 19. It's going to return x, and it's never going to get to line 20 or 21. If this is false, then it's going to continue to line 21. It's going to return y, because y was the biggest number. And notice that it will accomplish the same, I hope. 10 and 7, biggest number is 10. But now it's a much cleaner code. Remember the video that we talked about, that we saw at the beginning of the semester? We want to be able to have a clean, elegant, but efficient code. And this will accomplish the same thing that we had before. Any questions? But something to keep in mind is the return is going to end the method, is never going to go through the rest. It works the same way the break statement that we covered when we did for loops. Now let's create another method. The next one that we're going to be doing, we are going to take a string from the user, and then we're going to ask them to see if they want to find a specific letter. So we're going to leave that one there, and we're going to say, scanner, please enter a word or phrase. And now we're going to save it. So now it's going to be a string. And we're going to say phrase. And scan next line. And then we're going to say enter letter to find. And we're going to save it as a string. And we're going to say letter equal to scan. Or we can do a char, but we prefer to work with strings just because your APCSA does not cover char. And now we are going to create a method. It's going to be a public method, public static void. Well, it's not going to be void because we want to be able to return whether the letter was found or not. So therefore, we're going to return a Boolean and find letter. So let's go and make our call. So we know what we are going to be getting. It's going to be find letter. And we are going to send in two strings, right? We're going to send in the phrase, that'll be our arguments, or the actual parameters, and the letter. So therefore, we're going to catch them in here, but we need to be able to declare them because they're going to be formal parameters. So it'll be string, key as phrase, and string, and we're going to say L as letter. Or braces. So how can I find, or how can I determine if the letter is in the string? So let's say we type in Santa Fe High School. And I want to be able to find out if the letter A is found. So what we need to do, we just need to be able to go through the entire and see if each of the letters will match A. And I know what you're saying. Yes, can I just say index of? Yes, but we're going to work through other methods that are going to be better. So yeah, there's other ways to be able to create this, but for now, just keep up with me. So therefore, we're going to do a for loop for int I equal to 0. I is less than the word, so be or the phrase p dot length, then I plus plus. And now we are going to compare each of the letters S, A, N, T, A, and we're going to create an if statement if p dot substring from I to I plus 1 is equal to L. So I have a mistake in here. What is my error that I'm making? Correct. When we are comparing two strings, we actually want to be able to say that equals L. That equals is a method that is in your string class, but it's a non-static method, the same with the substring that we need to create the object. In this case, the object is P. And that is an L. I should say letter instead. So sometimes if it looks like I want to change my variable names. If it's equal, then we found it. And therefore, we can just return true. And then it's going to continue checking each one if it's false. If this is false, it's never going to go through here. And then once it ends the for loop, then we can say return false. It was not found at all. And what do we want to do with this? Right? It's going to return true or false in this case, but we need to be able to catch it, save it into a variable. We need to print it, or we can do an if statement. We can say if found, right? We don't need to say if is equal to true. We can just say if found, because this is going to be either true or false. Then we're going to say letter was found. And we're going to do a print statement. Else, letter was not found. So let's see if this works. Let's go and run it. Santa Fe High School. Let's say letter to be found is the N. And it says letter was found. Let me just do you can't see it. And I don't want to adjust my things, so just to save time, let me just put an extra line so you can see the results. Letter was found. Now, let's say Santa Fe High School. There are no Z's in there, so Z, letter was not found. So therefore, we can catch and save it to a new variable. If we're going to return something, we can print it out like we did, or we can even use it within an if statement. Now, remember that if it's returned true or false, it can be an if statement simple as this. Any questions? Something to keep in mind is that whenever you're doing a return statement, it works as a break. And even if you have a void method and you want to use a return statement, you can use it, but you just can't have anything here. And that if this is void. Now, sometimes you're going to end up with the following error. So let's say that I said true, and then I forget to type in my other return statement. Notice what's going to happen. Error, missing return statement. It's going to tell you that you are missing a return statement in here. So it will remind you that, say, hold on, you tell me that you're going to return a Boolean. And what if we don't go through this for loop? You're not returning a Boolean, so there's going to be an error. They're going to hold you accountable. And if you are returning, let's say, instead of a true and false, you're going to return a number, 6, or an integer, it's going to say incompatible types. You are trying to return a Boolean, but then you return an integer. So just be careful with those type of errors. In this case, it's false. Let's work through one more exercise. The only values that we have returned so far are primitives, correct? We have returned an integer and a Boolean. We can return a string, but we can actually return also a object. So we are going to create once again for our third part of this. I am going to delete everything that's inside my main method. I'm going to leave my other two methods above, and you should. So when I see it, I know that you've done the coding exercises along with me. So now I'm going to create another method above the main. We're leaving our main method all the bottom part. And what we're going to do, we are going to create a rectangle, and we're going to pass it over to a method, and we are going to multiply the length by 2. Now let's look at the rectangle class once again. Rectangle class is one of the adhesive classes that you guys will be using on your coding exercises, or the circle, or the regular polygon. And what we're going to do in here, we are going to create a rectangle, and for the rectangle, let's say the instance variables, the variables that they have is the length and the width. It's 1.0 is the default. And we have several constructors. We have a constructor that's going to create a rectangle, and it doesn't update anything inside. And actually, I prefer for this to be here, but they have it right next to each other. It doesn't do anything. That means that it's going to leave the length and the width as 1.0. We can call this constructor when we create a rectangle and just give it one double. And that's going to set the length and the width to the same. So it's going to be a square. And this is the one that we're going to use today. And we have another constructor that's going to get two doubles, and that'll be one for the length and one for the width. So therefore, I'm going to use this one here. We are going to construct a square from the rectangle using the rectangle class. So we need to create an object. So it'll be rectangle, rectangle1 equals, call the constructor. We decide that it's going to be called the second constructor. It'll be rectangle, and let's go make the length and width be 5.0. Perfect. And let's go and print system.out.print, and we're going to print the rectangle one. Remember that whenever we are printing an object, we are actually going to be calling that toString method that should be set length, returning nothing. Set width, we're going to return nothing. Get double is returning a double. Get width, or get length, returning a double. Get width, returning a double as well, returning the width. The get area, returning a double. Perimeter equals is going to compare two rectangles to see if they're the same rectangle. Basically, they have the same length and the same width. and toString. This is what it's going to print. I think this happened to me before, right? I delay an extra brace for my main method. There you go. So we create a non-rectangle by a square that has a 5 and 5. So now what we're going to do, we're going to create a method that is going to take the length, or it's going to take the width, and we're going to multiply by 2. So we're going to modify the length. So our method will be above, will be public, static. We don't need to create a new object to create it to use this method. It's not going to be void. We are going to return the rectangle itself. And the name of the method will be change length. What are we going to receive? We are going to receive the rectangle that we created. So let's go make the call to the method. So we change length. And we're going to send in the rectangle 1 that we created. So therefore, we are going to receive the rectangle. Remember that this is a formal parameter inside the definition for the rectangle, or what we call the signature. So be rectangle, and we need to give it a name, R. Perfect. Or you can say rectangle 1 if you wish, but I prefer to give it a different name. So what we're going to do, we're just going to multiply the width by 2. So therefore, to be able to access the width of the rectangle, we need to be able to use the get width. We're going to use the set width to change it, but we want to be able to multiply by 2. So first we need to be able to access. And you're going to tell me, well, Diaz, I know that the length is 5, correct? Yes, but once you get over here, you don't have any clue of what the length will be. We want to be able to double it. So therefore, it's going to be a double. And we're going to say the length of the rectangle is going to be equal to, and we're going to access the length using the method. With the width, we're going to say get width. This is the method that we are using. R.get width. That is going to return. So notice that your get width is returning a double, correct? And we are going to catch it and save it into length. Now we are going to change the width of the rectangle by using the set method. The set method is over here. Set width method is going to take in a double. It is not going to return anything because it's only going to update the object. So therefore, it'll be R set width. And if I do it here, I'm making a mistake because it's expecting a double as a formal parameter. So therefore, we need to send in, it's trying to catch a double once it goes into the method. So it's going to be length. And now we are going to return the rectangle, which is R. So let's go and run it. Oh, but we're going to actually, we are going to change the to twice, right? So we need to multiply by 2. We're going to run it. And the same thing happened as before. Why? Well, because we're calling the method, but we're not doing anything to it, right? So it's going to change, and let's go and print out the rectangle 1 and see what happened. So we did modify it. Notice that we didn't catch it. It's returning the rectangle, but we didn't catch it. So what happened? So even if I place this as a void, let's say I'm not going to return the rectangle. Even if I place it as a void, what we talked about last time is that it should still be the same, correct? So therefore, you might want to think, so when do I need to be able to return an object? So let's say that we're going to ask the user for a size of a circle. We're going to create now a circle. So let's say, and the user, we're going to say, I want my radius to be 10. And we want to be able to create a method that's going to create a circle and is going to return it to us. So let's go and do so really quick. Public static. We're going to return a circle. So it's not going to be a void method. I'm going to say create circle. And this is common things that are going to be asked to you by the APCSA. Now let's look at the circle class. The radius is going to be a double. It has two constructors. The first one basically leaves the circle with radius 1. The second one is going to take in a radius, and this is the one that we're going to use. So we are creating a new circle here. So we are going to take in a double, which is the radius. That'll be the formal parameter. So let's go ahead and call the method. We're going to create a circle. So create circle. And we're going to pass in rad. So rad has to be a double. If we leave as an integer, it should work out fine because an integer is bigger. But let's change it to a double and say 10.0. So it matches. And in here, we're going to create a circle. So therefore, we have to create circle C equal to new circle, and the radius will be R. And we're going to return the circle itself. We are going to catch over here. So because we are returning the circle, in here, if I run, it's not going to do anything. What do we need to do with the circle? First, we're going to save into a new circle. Circle is equal to circle 1. Circle, the name of the circle is circle 1. And we don't need to do the new because this is going to return a circle that's already been created. And now let's go and print the circle. Let's go and run it. Give me the circle that I need. Come through. Come through. I like to copy it first before I refresh it. We run it again. There you go. This is my radius 10. Correct? So we created the circle. We create the radius. We can ask the user for the radius. Then to create the circle, we call the method that's going to create the circle and going to return it. Now, if the only thing that we need to be able to return the circle, we actually can just, we don't need to save it. The same thing that we did at the beginning. We can actually just return the circle as this. And then it should be exactly the same. So that is the return statements, return methods, that we can return primitives, but we can actually return references to an object. Remember, in here, you actually not returning a circle, you are returning the reference where the circle is located. The only thing that you're going to be returning is the location of the circle. So therefore, it's going to be pointing over here. And once this method is over, this gets trash collected. And therefore, circle 1 is still pointing to circle that we created, which was 10.0.